Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Destination Big Leagues. In today's episode, I've got Akshat from Camb.ai. He's one of the most credentialed people I know out here in Dubai in terms of AI. He previously worked at Apple as an AI ML engineer, moved to Dubai subsequently to start a company called Camb.ai, which specializes in speech to speech transcription. Thank you so much, Akshat, for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, Ronak, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, we've been friends for quite a bit of time. Uh, you were in San Francisco working at Apple, and you studied at CMU, one of the sort of most sought after universities for AI.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, talk us through like your journey of starting Camb.ai.
Yeah, so I mean, just a quick backstory to myself. So what I guess Camb.ai does is we specialize in speech to speech translation. So you can turn any audio video feed in from one language into many more. We do that for both on demand content, both for live streams, and then every other kind of localization need surrounding that, right? So we're a AI partner for any league or any enterprise that has a globalization strategy and wants AI to be part of that globalization strategy. So that's how we kind of look at our position in the market of what we offer. What I guess my backstory leading to this has been I grew up in India. I always like hacked around with computers as for as long as I can remember. I always grew up fascinated by physics, so I used to do all these like inter-school competitions in physics and all. And I basically like any science fair, I used to be like just presenting a project. So I loved building stuff, and I think a large part of that is what like got me into CMU. So as you mentioned, CMU is like a really great school for anything robotics and AI. A lot of people joke that machine learning was born in Carnegie Mellon, which might not be a joke, right? You could argue a lot towards that. And I had the privilege of like meeting some really smart people, really smart professors, folks that I started working with in the spaces of like natural language, speech, etc. CMU is also very strong in their speech AI department. So it was that kind of academic experience and experience from high school that was like, okay, I always want to keep building stuff, and then I got interested in speech AI and AI in general. So I joined Siri in their Cupertino office, and we were actually building one of the first versions of a Chat GPT like system within Siri in 2020, which was, I mean, it was kind of funny because that team, like, I was literally the youngest kid on there. I was 20 years old, and it was like, I guess a way to put it was like the Gandalfs of AI in it, like men with long white beards, spent like 20, 30 years doing double PhDs and stuff. So very scary for me, but at the same time, very exciting because Siri was being led by Ian Good. Well, I guess the AIML group at large was being led by Ian Goodfellow at Apple at that time. And Ian Goodfellow invented GANs, which essentially gave birth to all of this mania, and Ian is referred to as the GAN father of AI, so or the father of generative AI. So that was my early experience, and then I started a company that was TechStars and Alchemist funded. Then I exited that, and then I came back to my core interests in AI and speech, and that's where I kind of reconnected with the folks that I was researching with at CMU and other universities, and I was like, we should build something in speech AI, and it made a lot of sense for us to focus on the vertical of speech to speech translation, a problem that we all grew up with, a problem that was very much there to be solved from both the I guess societal perspective of it and also the economical aspect of it. And that's kind of like my journey so far and how we kicked off camp.
Right. So, I mean, generally post graduation, Apple's a super exciting place for most people to, work at. You had the opportunity there. Uh, what was a unique cultural experience at Apple that you took away?
Well, that I've never been asked that question. That's an interesting one. I feel um, just I guess like there's a lot of these big tech companies that you apply to when you're graduating college, like Facebook and Google, Facebook at the time, and Apple and stuff. And I think Apple had the most like unique type of culture. Just I mean, I don't know whether it's psychological or not, but you get a very suave feeling when you when you think about like working at Apple. When I went to the interview and stuff, I was like, oh, this place is actually very classy. I wouldn't confuse that with elitist or anything. The people at Apple are like really amazing. Everybody's like super humble and just they work on their stuff kind of thing. But I definitely got the vibe of like, oh, this is like it's not like a tech bro type of like riding your bicycle sort of place. Although the garden, the big orchids and all that they have in their main office is wonderful and worth taking your bike out and everything. But I got a very, I guess, classy touch or sense of feel to it. And then when I started working, I realized that Apple was a really exciting place for me to start off with because of course I'd interviewed everywhere. By the grace of God, I had the option of more than one kind of company to work at, and I chose Apple because I wanted to be in a place where like software and AI was just kind of really starting to catch up, with Apple's like primarily being a hardware player, so to say, and made most of their money on that. So I felt like I wanted to be in a place where there's perhaps just a higher opportunity for growth in software and AI. And looking back, I think it was the right decision for me because I mean, like I just mentioned the type of things that we were building in Apple that has eventually, while not that particular project itself, but technology like that has essentially recrafted what we know to be the future, right? So I think that was very cool to be part of, and I will take a page out of Steve Jobs' book in a sense, and he says like everything makes sense looking backwards. I kind of feel that like even though like Apple might not have been everybody's first choice to work in like AI or something, you would have thought of something like Google or DeepMind in like 2019, 2020. I'm very glad that I joined Apple and worked there for a while.
Right. Um, you know, so you have a Meta, you have Google, I mean, you have OpenAI as well, kind of leading the wave in terms of the incumbents in AI. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty clear to see like Apple's kind of been slacking. I think I just read like an article recently as well, where like I think Tim Cook replaced one of the persons leading, I believe the Siri team, and shifted directive. Uh, what do you think, like in terms of like AI, will Apple be able to catch up as a company? Do they have that ability?
Yeah, look, very practically speaking, since I've been on now, I don't know, again, the grace of God, I've been put in like both the driver's seat when it comes to bleeding edge AI and also industry enterprise trends in adoption of AI. What I realize is that Google and Apple and AWS will always win, period. Like, um, and the reason for that is that Apple has something that just like very few other companies have, and that is major distribution, brand loyalty, and ecosystem. And over time, I think what we'll realize, yes, it's very important to be good at AI, but as long as you're good enough at AI, eventually it'll just be the distribution, the brand equity, and the experiences you're creating for your end users. And it's safe to say that to date, even if you can argue on the side of like, oh, is Apple slacking off in AI and stuff, I do generally still feel that they produce some of the best user experiences. I mean, yeah, you keep arguing whether yes or no on that, but it's safe to say that Apple still produces really good user experiences, continues to solve problems for the end mobile consumer, and that's what will matter. So even if they're perceived a little bit slow in like where they are with AI and stuff, it won't matter too much in the long run of things because it's just not how I guess consumerism and the industry works, right? Like, are you going to switch out from your Apple ecosystem just because you can do slightly better image editing on a Samsung phone? Probably not, right? Like, am I ever going to give up on my MacBook? Although, like, I should probably be using something else to be better. Pretty hard, right? Like, it's just one of those things. So I don't think Apple can ever lose. I don't think Google can ever quote unquote lose. Like, they will never be out of it, right? So I don't think. Yeah, there's maybe this branding external fear of like how they're perceived and stuff that could definitely get impacted of like, if they don't, if companies don't demonstrate that they're catching up or keeping up, it could just impact the quality of engineers they get in to be like, oh, like, you know oh, where do you want to go for AI, OpenAI or Apple? Like, maybe a guy will say OpenAI right now, right? So it is probably one of those things, but also I know Apple. If you've seen, I mean, it's not in the news because like when is this type of stuff in the news? But if you're at any of the research conferences and stuff, Apple has taken a very beautiful and refreshing approach to talking about their technology, and it's not just in the open. They publish their research. They have open source stuff. Now, I don't claim to be an Apple expert and know the entire history of whatever they've put out. But to me, when I see Apple actually publishing their research, open sourcing their IP and everything, that is very new to me. And I can see again why they're doing it. It goes back to the point of what I was saying, that they essentially continue to want to have the best engineers and AI minds. And one way you can do that is, if you publish your research and you open source it, it gives a lot of motivation for like, really some of the best minds in research and academia to be like, oh, okay, like Apple's also doing a ton of cool stuff in AI, and I should check it out. So that is my opinion of it. Like, I'm not worried about Apple or Google at all. I might be worried about Meta, but not those companies.
So you're saying that Apple has like kind of like published their papers and like decided to open source some of their stuff as well. Like
Yep.
you see the shift. Like there's some companies that are completely like chose to like close their models, not give access. Like with GPT, with OpenAI, and with Meta, completely like open sourcing. What is the sort of business model or the thought behind open sourcing and choosing to keep your models private? Like, what is the rationale behind these large companies?
Yeah, so I mean, it's great that you kind of pretexted it with what is the rationale behind large companies doing it, because there's a different rationale behind smaller companies doing it. And as an example, and a shameless plug here, but Camb.ai itself, we've open sourced some of our previous models, right? For example, we open sourced a text to speech model called Mars 5, and it was one of the first models that could do speech generation for things as hard as sports commentary and stuff. Now, for us, the rationale was that we literally wanted to, we wanted to be able to, of course, give back to the open source community, but we also wanted to kind of demonstrate that, hey, you can actually build amazing, beautiful first principles AI and speech AI through the UAE. Because I mean, we are fighting different types of demons and biases here, right? Like when we tell people we're based out of Dubai, they start twitching their face and be like, that doesn't sound real, or where your team is based out of. So it's for smaller companies, it's a way to kind of demonstrate their prowess, to get a lot of brand virality and attract some of the best talent. I mean, outside of all these reasons, those of course also kind of just build on what we have built and continue that process. So that's the motivation for a smaller company like Camb.ai. And some of these things are shared by larger companies. So a company like Meta, yes, one of the pillars of their open source strategy, and I don't work at Meta, but it would be that, hey, we want to continue to attract some of the best minds on the planet, and open sourcing things is just a great way to identify the best hackers, developers, and researchers who can do meaningful stuff. Because over time, this whole technical interview loop will break down. It'll make zero sense the way interviews are being done today. And one of the best ways of kind of identifying talent will just be like, hey, okay, like this guy, he contributed like, I don't know, 50 times in the last 3 months to Llama, right? Like, of course you want to hire the guy, right? Like, that's kind of going to be, so hiring, attracting best talent, growing a really good developer ecosystem is one kind of moat around open sourcing as a large company. Also, the other thing is since you're a large company and you can get the word out there about your open source models much quicker, it creates almost it kind of feeds back to the first point, but it allows you to almost have contributions for free, right? Like, I mean, if you just put out your model there and suddenly you have 10,000 people in the world that want to additionally improve on that and develop on that, that gives you great feedback. And that also gets you a lot more kind of brains thinking about what you're doing. And I think this might be something that I don't know is talked a lot about, but it's, especially in generative AI, you want, the only way you can develop good generative AI is if you deploy it and test it. And it's kind of a chicken and egg problem, because most places you cannot deploy any AI until it's like ready, right? Especially enterprise use cases. But until you actually deploy it, it won't start getting good enough, right? And this is not just like the machine learning part of it. This is even just like learning how to deploy it, right? Or like thinking about the best workflow for it. With generative AI, it's very hard to develop something perfect until you deploy it. And what open source does, it gives a great de-risked almost way for companies to be like, look, we're putting our model out there. It's open source. We're doing it out of the good of our heart and everything. So it's harder to like kind of take them to the ground or bully them over, oh, this doesn't work, because it's free, right? It's open source. Like, from a community perspective, the only emotion you will have towards it is like, oh, cool, that's free. If for example, if Meta had packaged the same thing closed source but as an app and it had a lot of like issues and hallucinations, Twitter would go crazy on it and be like, oh, this shit doesn't even work. But the same thing, you open source and suddenly it's like, oh, okay, like we can actually develop on it. So it's that as well. And then I think the final thing is, especially for a company like Meta, it's about in I think Mark Zuckerberg's own words, it is about setting a standard for how AI is to be developed. So if a model like Llama can get enough adoption such that it is in most places where AI is being developed or any AI app is being developed, then their architecture, their way of just like releasing stuff becomes a standard, right? And I guess Meta's entire play is like keeping the hook on distribution, right? So the more they can kind of spread the layer of AI, the more it can become a standard, and then they can often offer services on top of that. So for example, Meta will offer like an app that will be best compatible with their Llama models. And so if you already have Llama in your ecosystem, the integration and the onboarding of that becomes like immediately easy, right? So I think these three reasons: talent, kind of the ease of the developer ecosystem and growth, and then it's about setting almost like an open standard for stuff. So I think those are some of the things why bigger companies will open source their IP.
Right. Before kind of delving and going into further detail about Camb and what you guys exactly do, I remember you telling me about, like an recruiting sort of startup that you had called Slingshot. And can you talk about, some of your other entrepreneurial journeys, before founding Camb?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, after Apple, I founded a company called Slingshot, and it was essentially sports scouting, but for like genius, nerdy, cracked engineers. So instead of finding like LeBron or Messi when they were 13 or 14, I was trying to find the next Zuckerberg or the next Bezos, right? And my concept behind it was, when I was growing up, I used to have a lot of these friends that were very good at cricket. I grew up in India, and cricket's essentially the only sport to date that we all love. But jokes aside, I saw like these kids going into like serious like training camps and just like making like under 16 India cricket and stuff. And I was like, damn, this is actually like, if you're really good, you can achieve such a high level of kind of success even as like a teenager. And like I felt, I mean, again, not to put myself on a high horse or anything, I felt that I was an athlete, but my sport was just programming and physics. So what can I do? Like just go to a science fair or get 100 on my test? Like what can I, like what is at that level that I can achieve that would be super awesome? So I think kind of growing up with this um, sense of feeling of like, hey, there should have been something way better, like like playing for India under 16 type of thing, for computer science, for entrepreneurship, for just like really cracked like teenagers who want to code. So that's essentially the motivation behind what I built with Slingshot. Is I used to essentially scout for really genius teenagers who started coding when they were 9 or 10, and by the time they got like mid-teens, like 15, 16, they could outcode any senior engineer, right? So it's just very smart kids. So I started helping them get jobs and internships at Y Combinator and Techstars companies. And yeah, I mean, it was beautiful because like we used to regularly see this like 16-year-old 10 times outcode any of the full-time engineers, right? Initially, people were very skeptical of this idea, like, oh, you're putting kids to work type of thing. It got that like label to it for a while, which we tried hard to debrand away from. And then we finally came up with the slogan of like, we're finding the Lebrons of tech, and then it started making sense to everybody. We said like, would you hire Zuckerberg when he was 14? The answer would be sure, yeah, I'd give it a shot. And so then, you know, the kind of that just change in hook started like attracting like more companies and stuff. Like we got into Techstars. That was an amazing journey. But frankly, this was my first business, and it took it took a lot for a computer science graduate to learn how to do business, and this was my first kind of foray into it. So we made, I mean, this mission was not really about revenue and business, things that I really didn't see, kind of thing, as my first business, and I just kind of focused on the mission. And it was for one of more of those reasons, and it becoming essentially an HR company, that it lacked the type of scale that a VC would want to back and fund. And now actually, I mean, in hindsight, if you see like how easy it has become to code, that concept might fly again. Like it's completely revivable. But at that point I was like, okay, it's time to wind this down, give it to somebody who can actually run this as an operations first company.
Right.
And I moved on from it, and then I started Camb.ai. So that was my journey before it. Of course, I've tinkered with so many projects and ideas like throughout, but that was probably the most first meaningful like true business that I did.
Right. So this brings me to my follow-up question, you know, because you mentioned, right, how easy it's become to kind of code with tools like Cursor, Winsoft, etc., you know, and the whole point of Slingshot was essentially to kind of find genius coders, right? Today, like, I don't think coding is that, you know, sought after skill set because it's got commoditized, right? You can still be the top 0.01% of coders, you know, where you're bringing extreme value, you know, building new foundational models. You know, today, if you were to do Slingshot and be sort of like an AI recruitment sort of company, how would you select for candidates? You know, now you're not going to be probably looking for coding proficiency or coding
Yeah.
prowess. What do you, basically the question I'm trying to ask is, how do you evaluate for genius? How do you evaluate for
Yeah.
the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Steve Jobs, Bill Gates?
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly hard in a largely diluted market where anybody can just say that they do something. And I'm sure you saw that meme of the Columbia student where he created like how to cheat lead code without finding out and stuff and getting all these offers. It's just an example of how, and it's always been. It's never been a great technical interview. Like it's the way tech companies have constructed interviews is just because that type of lead code style of interviewing is the best balance of efficiency and judging someone's skill set. Where they were like, I'm sure they've come up with much better ideas, but at scale, that was just the most efficient, standardized way to do like interviewing. Aside, and it's the same thing for the SAT, right? Like, does the SAT actually do anything to judge like how good and how well will this student perform? I think it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy at this time, because like really smart kids do well on the SAT and then just generally do well in life. But it's not like if you do badly on the SAT, you won't do amazingly well, right? So it's not a full indicator of what can somebody achieve, but it's a good, like, it's a good balanced test to make sure that you can judge like some kind of competence at scale, right? So I wouldn't want to like disrespect any of the existing structures, because like it has kind of reached its equilibrium where that is the only thing viable. But now with AI, as you're saying, with interviewing, it's becoming very hard for that to remain sustainable. It's just not going to, be the thing you want. But the thing is, maybe and this might be a little bit controversial to think about, but it's a question now of like, if AI is truly getting to the point where it can make a 1x coder a 10x coder, do you need to actually hire 10 engineers? Can you just spend more time finding one right engineer, right, rather than going out for 10? And I don't know the answer to this, but if you think about that type of thinking, you might realize that, well, in the next few years, the way recruitment and interviewing could change is that you become much more vertical into finding much fewer people, but very, very good people, right? And so avenues open up of like more creative ways for interviewing. I can give you an example. Like most recently, I had a behavioral interview with a candidate first, because like I feel like you can tell a lot about that about a person just by speaking to them about a topic for an hour, right? So I had that first, and I was like, we're not going to do any lead code or anything. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a problem that we are working on, right? And a highly watered down version of it. Take my WhatsApp number and just work with me on the problem like we would be like on a day-to-day. I just want to see if I have fun working with you, if what kind of questions you ask, what is your methodology of like just getting something done in 1 week, right? And how do you ask for help? When do you ask for help? All those things. Those are like, I'm not claiming here to be like I've figured out how to do recruiting, because of course something like this is very hard to scale. I don't have like a week per candidate or anything, but I just feel something like this, after interviewing like 50 candidates, when I do with one person, it'll help me make sure that this one person potentially is just really, really good and worth hiring. The other thing for a research role is that instead, again, like asking of like, hey, like tell me what a neural network is, or like asking the lead code questions, the interview I gave is like, hey, here's a research paper that I recently read it, and on the next call we will have an open discussion about the research paper. You will tell me like the good parts about the architecture, why it's maybe trainable, not trainable, why it'll scale, why it would not. I might have some thoughts around it, but we'll just kind of critique the paper together. And so because we're at I would safe to say pretty much the bleeding edge of anything speech AI related, I do have to actively in real time come up with more creative ways to judge somebody's competence than like giving them a lead code question, because it doesn't really tell much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are great ways to kind of figure out if someone, totally has kind of the dedication and then the intellectual patience also to go through a whole week-long interview process,
Yeah.
you
And
know.
it's more fun as well, because at the end of the day, like they might just learn how to work. Like,
Yeah.
they might just realize that, oh, like, okay, this is actually, I'm interviewing for the first thing out of college. I really don't know how to work professionally, but this is a great experience. So I don't feel bad at all about a candidate going through a week of this, because I know that they're also learning a lot. Like we're actually giving them something when they're interviewing with us, which is I don't think you can just get that immediately and easily in other companies, or even off like 1 or 2 years into your career.
Right. I mean, in general with AI just keeping on getting more impressive, honestly, day by day, right? Like with just things just constantly, new things just constantly keep coming to market and
Mhm.
really pushing the barrier to, what was possible. Like how, like what is your, I mean, you're probably doing this at Camb, but what is your dream org structure of a company like Camb? Like how what would be the end goal? Like,
Yeah, so I always tell all my colleagues that whether they've been like founding members of our team or whether they're new people that have joined us, I always say that the type of company we want to build, let's forget about a second the mission and like what we're building. The type of team I want to build and the type of people we want to be is that after, let's say, 2 years, when we're all pretty much done at Camb, right? We did what we were supposed to. Maybe that was a meaningful exit, whatever, right? Time will tell. But I want any of us to be able to walk out, go into any room and say, "Hi, my name is XYZ. I was ABC at Camb.ai, and I'm building DEF. I'm raising $5 million for my seed, and people should run after you and put money down your throat." Right? If we're not building a company like that, then we're not building anything. And I mean, that is the most accurate way I can summarize the type of people we want to be out of the experience of Camb. And it's kind of like, it's that mentality, it's like Kobe's mentality that we take and transform into a lot of the themes that we're solving in Camb.ai, right? So again, going on like who we want to be or the type of team we want to be, and this might sound blasphemous, but I openly tell our customers and our investors this as well, that people speaking in different languages or content being in different languages is very exciting, but it's a guaranteed eventuality. If I don't do it, somebody else will. This is a future that we will live in for sure. It's not a surprise to me. And so getting out of bed every day thinking about I'm going to turn everything into every language is an exciting mission, but it's also obvious that it will be that way. And so, of course, that keeps us motivated, but there's something deeper that keeps us more motivated as a team. And it's exactly what I was slightly referring to previously, is like when we tell people that we're building out of Dubai and we're not like we're not like a dorm room out of Stanford, right? People don't want to believe it. They've tried very hard to not believe it. And I think it's not language barriers that's a problem. It's the biases that sit behind language barriers that society has created, which I'm very excited to demolish, right? And that keeps me up. That makes me want to get out of bed and be like, this company should succeed because we should be able to tell the world that we build an amazing A-class AI company out of the middle of the desert. And so you shouldn't ask us like where we're from, right? It should not matter. And I feel like when Camb.ai is successful, it will destroy more things than just language barriers, right? And that's really the mentality of the team.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of times during the conversation that we've been having, you chose to build Camb AI in Dubai. You stayed in India, you stayed in San Francisco. You never really grew up in Dubai. It's kind of like an anomaly where, a really a credentialed ML AI engineer like you chooses to leave a super high paying job from San Francisco and, move all the way to Dubai where, AI has not reached the level of maturity as it's reached in India or like San Francisco, right? So why did you make that decision?
Yeah, it's pretty easy actually. So even though I haven't lived in Dubai, my family has lived in Dubai for like 7 years now. And when we started Camb.ai, the mission has always, of course, been to localize content and globalize content and have everybody have access to the world's content. And it is impossible to run a company like that where you're going into different cultures and different languages and different geographies to run off of PST time zone. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you can try and do that, right? And that is exactly what I experienced. I did start the inklings of Camb.ai when I was in California, but I very quickly realized that if I had to scale this company to be a company that does globalization, by the very nature, it needs to have some global like pivot center, and that cannot be California, right? Just because of time zones, just because of the just the natural ability it gives you. So my initial motivation to come eastwards was to find a place where I could centralize all of my operations and continue to reach every time zone. Out of Dubai, it's a very gifted geography because you can reach every time zone in the world sustainably, right? Like in PST, you might have to be up from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. to make every meeting. But in Dubai, you can actually complete a world time zone from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. in the night, which is not too bad in founder world, right? Like this is not too bad at all. To be able to make the world's time clock in that time zone, in that time window, very attractive. And then eventually I started seeing the advantage of it. Like we found such great talent. I mean, essentially when you think about it, being in the center of everything also gave us access to the world's talent pool rather than just kids out of Stanford or UC Berkeley or MIT or CMU, right? Like, and no disrespect to any of these institutions, but the point is like what we were building, we required highly specialized folks that were PhDs that had worked in this, and they didn't really happen to be a lot of the times from the US, right? They were in Europe, they were in like different parts in India, and so this gave us the advantage of also quickly accelerating our kind of team, finding the right people. And then eventually we realized that Dubai, although, you know, as you mentioned, might not have reached peak AI maturity, it is, I mean, safe to say when you think about AI leaders in the world, China comes into mind, US comes into the mind, which next geography comes into mind, right? Like India, not yet, not really. Europe, France, maybe because just because of Mistral, but it's not really like, you know, it hasn't really exploded, and you know all the regulations in Europe are just making it harder and tougher. But then you actually come to a geography and you see UAE, and you see them driving a lot of the global investment in AI across the world, and you start to realize, well, if any other place is going to do it, if not China and the US, it's going to be the UAE. And so increasingly so, I found more and more proof points to just be like, hey, you know what? Like this is where the company is going to belong. This is what we're going to call home. And even though we might have to answer a stupid question here or two, it's going to be well worth it because we're going to build a tremendous company. And that bet has played off, and it's more than one reason that we just continue to stay in Dubai. That said, now we are a global team. We're everywhere from Japan to North America. Our business is global, but we will continue to operate out of Dubai because it's the best time zone, best geography to work from.
That's quite impressive. I think it's been 2 years since Camb, or a little
Yep.
more than two.
Yep.
You've raised $15 million.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talk about the raising process, right? The biases that come with being a Dubai-based AI startup, and talk about it from a perspective for someone who's trying to move into this region, and what are the hurdles that they're going to face while fundraising.
Yeah, so you want to be very conscientious about what type of company you're building in Dubai and where you want to raise from, right? So there are certain teams that will work in Dubai and UAE, and there's certain teams that won't. And that's just the truth of it. Like, as much as we want to think otherwise, like there's some core truths of this, right? So when we built an AI company, like I said, of course, we have raised from amazing local investors like the Dubai Future District Fund, DFDF. We've raised from Orasia Capital. I mean, these are probably safe to say the best venture capital funds out of the UAE. So of course we've raised from them, but also we raised from Japan, from North America, and from the UK, right? And our fundraising strategy again was not like, hey, we need to hoard in the brand names. we need to work with investors and partners that will help bring us to market, period, right? Like, I don't, as much as people would think, our company doesn't really care about a brand name, right? Like, if you are helping me grow my mission, and if you are helping me unlock like 1,000 new businesses, I will love you. And if you're just like an XYZ venture that founders just want to suck up to or have to suck up to, that's just not us, right? So we work with partners and investors. So our kind of fundraising strategy has always been like this. We want to be geographically diverse. We want to be able to work with investors that will give us access to unique markets and the right kind of acceleration to businesses in those markets. And so that's kind of been our fundraising strategy, and it's, touch wood, worked quite well in our favor. Like I said, we're a globally diverse team now, and a lot of that is because we've raised from very diverse places, and not just raised it from one place, right? Which would have been, we wouldn't have as much ammo as we had if we just raised it from one geography or one city on the planet, right? So that's kind of been our fundraising strategy. I think the company, the team, the traction is, of course, all the reasons we've continued to raise money. And, we just announced that we're raising a 75 million Series A, taking active conversations from a lot of great investors who are going to add amazing value to the business. But I think, of course, as we see, like, there's more and more VC in UAE, there's more and more interest in funding AI companies. This will reach a maturity stage, hopefully in the next few years. But until that time, you can already see from an operating level, the government's doing a lot to just give birth to AI companies here, right? Like, we work out of the Dubai Innovation One. We were very recently in the Dubai AI campus, right? And stuff. So there's more and more ecosystem building that's going on right now, which will hit maturity eventually.
Yeah, it only makes sense, right? The goal of Camb.ai is to democratize knowledge, and you've raised from Japan, North America, the UAE. It's a true reflection of the world's values and cultures, So that serves that purpose of your company. Dude, one of the things that really awes me is your humility. You just casually threw you raised $75 million, and I didn't even realize it. I was just like, what?
No, we didn't. No, sorry.
Okay,
we didn't raise it. We're raising it.
Okay, you're raising it. Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
still, it's a pretty big feat for someone to even raise $15 million in this region. That is super, super impressive. So what's the end goal of Camb.ai, right? Like, you guys are working with big leagues, right? Like the MLS, and go ahead and mention some of the other leagues you're doing. What's the end goal of Camb?
So if you've, for anybody watching who stayed with us until now, they'll realize that I'm a very unapologetic founder, and our mission statement is very unapologetic as well. It goes like, the internet was created for English speakers. It's about time we redesigned it for the world. And that is truly our mission statement. We believe that Camb.ai can manifest as a company and technology that democratizes the world's digital content and the internet to be equally available for everybody on the planet. That's a big mission. Sometimes it's a laughable mission because of the scale of it, but increasingly so with the partnerships that we stitch up with the amazing investors we onboard, with the amazing team we're aggregating. This looks more and more and more in sight, and it's going to remain a constant. So in the near term, of course, as you mentioned, we've partnered with quite a few international leagues like Major League Soccer, the Australian Open, very recently League One LFP, which is the French soccer league, houses like PSG and Marseille and all those clubs. Under NDA, but most you can pretty much say that we work with most 3-letter sports leagues and organizations on the planet today, with the aim of helping them not just converting audio video content into multiple languages, because I say that's the first step as a business, but really being an important part of their AI strategy within the larger globalization strategy. We cover the full kind of 9 yards of a localization strategy for enterprise and businesses to get to everybody on the planet in the native culture and tongue. So we want to be able to work with more amazing partners as well in the sports world. Of course, we're doing great things in the media world as well with with folks like IMAX and Comcast and such, who we've announced partnerships with. And then increasingly so, I mean, even venturing into a little bit of like the mid-market to B2C kind of area would be the eventual goal, because like I said, I mean, we're trying to recreate the internet for everybody. So today, when you look at Camb.ai's technology, it's very horizontal in localization needs. Like you can do probably some of the world's best document translation on Camb.ai's platform to like live streaming your game in multiple languages, right? So it's a full platform play today, and I mean, at least for the next few months, it's onboarding amazing partners and customers still.
Right. What do like enterprises get about AI right and wrong? Like, if you would advise enterprises on just AI adoption, AI strategy, what do you see them getting right and wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I could spend another hour on it, but I actually recently I spoke at Sports Business Journal. Shout out to them again. They gave us the amazing opportunity to kick off the AI track in New York for their Sports Tech Week, which was very cool. I was a trembling 27-year-old founder in a room with people from like the who's who of sports, people who had the amount of experience of the number of years I have remained alive, sort of thing. But what I realized was that our perspective on AI is very fresh, very relevant in the sports world and generally enterprise, because enterprises and sports have been always used to adopting technology at the forefront. But generative AI is super different, right? It's generative AI it's like I said at the start, it's like it follows a very strict chicken and egg problem that you need to be able to deploy it before you can perfect it. Otherwise, you're never going to deploy it, right? And so what we work on, and I'd like to call this a Camb.ai invention of sorts from our sales team, but it's a genius way to think about for an enterprise on AI. It's like what we tell enterprises is think about a vertical like localization. On the leftmost, draw out circles of use cases that are the most proven and easiest to do. So in our case, it might be something like a website document translation, right? And the size of that bubble represents in your mind the ROI for it, right? So you can make a bubble small or big, whatever, right? And then on the rightmost, you kind of plot down use cases which are very novel and disruptive, right? So maybe AI-based multilingual live streaming is on the rightmost. So you get this gradient graph where on the leftmost you have the easiest proven out use cases. The bubbles can be of any size, and then you go all the way to the right where the use cases are novel and disruptive. If an enterprise does this exercise a few times and gets this graph right, actually it's very easy for them to draw a vertical line of where they feel they belong today, right? Everything towards the left of that graph is things that they should have started 3 years ago, regardless of generative AI. Because these are use cases and applications where they're wasting money and time. And an organization an AI company can already start to add value. And once you start with those and you show ROI, speed, efficiency, then it becomes very easy to go on to the use cases on the right and shift you towards the right. And so we kind of follow this strategy, and again, like by God's grace, we're able to close many enterprises because our strategy isn't about converting audio video content into every language while pitching an enterprise. It's like, look, you need a full journey partner who will help you on your globalization strategy, help you save time, help you scale this, and that's Camb.ai. And this is how we're thinking about your business in the next 5 years, so work with us. right? That's our pitch. And so we feel it's biased to say, but we feel this is the right way to think about adopting generative AI. Start with very easy use cases that will immediately show ROI, even if they don't sound very sexy. You will realize the potential. You will realize how to work with AI. You will realize how to iterate and evaluate it and pay for it. And then you can very quickly get started on the rest, right? The jump then is not very high. So
Exactly. I mean, I totally
I'll
agree
end
with
that
you.
thought with this, right? What enterprises need to realize is that, and this is a beautiful thing that Zuckerberg said out of all the things he says, right? He said, he said the cost of being late to AI, or the cost of being early to AI is not very high, but the cost of being late to AI is very, very high. And so an enterprise must just, and I think a lot of our partners, a lot of our customers, a lot of our friends already realize this, but it's more about working backwards from an eventuality and asking how late do I want to be, rather than is it perfect today or not, right? And that's just the right mentality and how to think about generative AI. This like AI use case map that I described is probably a good way to actually execute that.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that you described it. I totally agree, right? It's about getting your foot in the game. It's about starting with the quick win AI use cases and then eventually, stepping up to the more complex use cases. You know, uh, like whenever I talk to clients from my company on just like AI, I mean, AI agents is kind of the whole like, new thing of this year. Like everyone's behind it, trying to understand what the implications for their organization is going to be. I tend to advise them like, listen, we're not going to get you a perfect solution, but we're going to get you a solution that, for example, works like a junior software engineer. Eventually, he might do 60, 70% of the tasks good. Eventually, you keep iterating and it'll eventually become like a staff engineer. You
Yep,
know, that's kind of how you should kind of look at the life cycle of
absolutely.
AI adoption,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so uh, how do you personally use AI? What are the tools? You've got some tips.
I try to code as much as I can on the weekends and like in the nights when maybe there's fewer meetings. But um, I mean, of course, everybody in the world uses ChatGPT or some form of ChatGPT for research. But I have genuinely found ChatGPT deep research to be very good. Like um, a white paper that I wanted to do on on hopefully something we can talk about very soon at Camb.ai probably would have taken me 1 month, which it took me 1 day to finish with deep research. Now I couldn't have accomplished that with ChatGPT or ChatGPT internet search, but it really got done with deep research, right? And it gave me like really, really fresh perspectives on things that I wouldn't even have thought about, and made it a white paper worth reading, right? So it's just amazing to me that like, because when we started building Camb.ai, we did it all pre-chat GPT. And I'm not like, I mean, I'm a very good engineer, but I'm not a very good engineer with 20 years of experience. Okay. But what I realized was that if only I had something like ChatGPT or equivalent, and when I say ChatGPT or equivalent, because it's like it's becoming a little bit of a rat race now. Like what it's any such product, the ability for a person like me to have planned out our, let's say, infrastructure for Camb.ai or stuff using that tool might have meant that we'd actually saved like 2 3 months or even more in our eventual product roadmap, right? Because like, and this is I think true for anybody, if they're building a whole company's new infrastructure, technology infrastructure, they're bound to get some things wrong in a world pre-chat GPT. But in a world where you have these LLMs, that sort of planning that you can do at an architectural level is mind-blowing. And I wish I had that. Like I wish we had the ability to do that before building all the infrastructure we had, because if we had done that, we would have kind of seen a lot of things where we could have gone wrong. And so my value, and not to like overstate this, but my value as even a very good engineer right out of college for like 2 3 years can be very, very darn close potentially to somebody who's a very good engineer with 20 years of experience, right? And so I think that thing is very exciting to me. The other tool, I mean, I don't generally often use it, but sometimes if I want to do like a quick new prototype for something that we want to build at Camb as a new product and stuff, then I sometimes try to use Cursor. But you try to use it in private, in the private mode, because we don't want our code going anywhere. And then I think I've seen Gemini's note taking in Google Meets to be amazing, and a great way to like improve actionables in out of a meeting, right? Because I always love to get like a task list down after every meeting, and if I see that Gemini hasn't really made tasks, it drives home the point that we really didn't talk about anything useful in the meeting, right? If it's just a creative meeting, that's great, but we're having a meeting, the outcome should be 5 or 6 like things to do, right? And I think these 2 3 things are the most practical things that I use in a day to day. Except yesterday I might have dabbled in a little bit of a Ghibli art and jumped on the bandwagon with 4O's image generation, which is quite good.
Hmm. Well, actually, there's I want to end the conversation, but with the Ghibli style thing, I actually read this article. There were like a couple of friends sharing it on social media. It was this famous Japanese artist,
Yeah.
and it goes back to kind of that fair use. What happens to traditional art when like when you commoditize an artist's style or technique. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit depressing. I'm not gonna lie, because it's super funny. Because 2 days ago, I've been actively trying to do more of this because I think it's more fun. I put up like Chat GPT and such in like voice mode, and I say debate with me on this topic, and I just ask, hey, choose a topic, we'll debate, and then you'll have to choose a winner or loser, right? Because I just love critically thinking about things, and it's like really bad at that stuff because it just can't like keep its position, and it always like gives in to be like, oh no, okay, you're right. I'm like, no, it's not the point of this. But I was literally having this conversation on like with Chat GPT, as odd as that sounds, of the debate with Chat GPT, to be like, what is the like is AI actually going to help creativity or not? I think the whole value of art and creativity was that it used to lead to something unique that not everybody could do, right? An artist was amazing because he used to be able to show you a piece that nobody else could probably make or think of. I mean, as harsh as that sounds, that is genuinely, at least in my mind, the psychological reason why we're in awe of certain artists, right? Because they can do things that it's not very easy for somebody else to replicate. If you fundamentally just take that away, then I mean, I don't even know what question to ask, right? It's like, oh, cool, this artist did make this painting, but now my nephew could make it, right? So it's a very dangerous proposition, especially published art. Maybe the definition of an artistic experience changes. Maybe it becomes about watching an artist paint a painting, which is amazing to look at because not many people get to see that, than just seeing a finished piece of art which an AI could have drawn, right? So maybe the experience of art, or what we call like the awe factor of humans creating art, needs to change, and maybe there's some good parts about it. Heck, like maybe nobody's thought about art in this manner for centuries, that hey, maybe it's a performance. Maybe it's more interesting to watch a human paint a painting than it is to see a finished product, right? Because it's the journey that's the more beautiful part than the finished product. And that is something AI won't give us yet, right? You cannot sit in a room or even sit on a call and just watch an AI paint and go like, wow, Maybe I'll be proved wrong. But Jen, at least as I would want to see, like if an artist sit on a call or whatever, do a live stream, be like, hey, I'm painting my painting. Just log in whenever you want and watch me paint. Maybe there's some form of art can take like that, but it is quite depressing that, at least what I would straightforwardly think why I would be awed by an artist by itself has gone away.
Yeah, I mean, dude, there's so many cultural and profound changes that are happening within the fabric of society, like just workforce transformation, the way we work, the way we learn, the
Yeah.
way we interact with art. It's all happening at one given time, one given point.
Hmm.
It's so overwhelming to kind of even like assimilate all of these transitions that are happening all together in parallel, right? Like historically, we had, like different revolutions or the industrial revolution and all these revolutions happening at a given phase, but this is like everything's getting disrupted from every angle.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting times ahead, you know
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know well, thank you so much, Akshat.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Rohit.
it.
It was great chatting.
Yeah. We'll probably try to have you once you raise your 75 million
Yes.
dollar round.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.